Good morning. I'm going to try another flight with my Strix Nano Goblin. So I'm going to hit record on my DVR. I'm going to turn on the auto launch.
Launch mode.
I'm going to arm the motors.
Motors armed.
I'm going to go to full throttle. Picking up my plane. There she goes. It is so difficult to hold the phone and launch the plane at the same time, especially when I'm launching with the wind. The first launch, I forgot to enable the throttle, and the second launch, I did not throw the plane hard enough. One of the first things that I like to do is fly around in manual mode and check to see that it's not climbing or diving. Since the winds were fairly light this morning, the plan was to go through the various flight modes while I filmed the plane. This proved to be extremely difficult, so a lot of the time I just put the plane into position hold and then I would fiddle with my phone and get it in the right position. I'm so glad position hold worked really well. Here I'm testing out loiter mode. We got a little bit of wind. You see it make that left turn. But it's doing pretty good. I changed the baud rate of the GPS to what Ready-Made RC recommended. And I also adjusted the pitch to throttle. So it looks like it's holding pretty good. There, it makes a little correction because we got some wind up there. So we're down to 100. Ooh, 106. That's a big turn. And then it doesn't look like it drops maybe 10 feet total. So I'm pleased with the loiter mode. So it's pretty difficult to fly the plane and video at the same time, but right now I'm in the altitude hold. You can see that there's about a good 10 to 15 mile an hour wind up there because it goes 20 miles an hour when I'm going against the wind, and then when I turn to go downwind, it speeds up to about 40 miles an hour. But this altitude hold makes this really nice because all I have to do is just worry about turning. And once I get it straightened out, the only thing I'm doing is just turning to kind of keep that wind going. It's taking care of the throttle, it's taking care of everything else. So I like it. I'll try to return to home here in a little bit. When I initiate the return to home, the Strix Nano Goblin doesn't mess around. You can watch the roll angle hit 60, actually past 60, when it makes its turn. So in my inav settings, I made it so that the plane will at least bank 60 degrees. I think that's a pretty good number. You can also see how windy it is. It's cruise speed, and it's barely 16 miles an hour into the wind. I don't know if it's a setting I'm missing, but I've seen some inav return to home videos where instead of saying RTH, it switches to say something like loitering around home. Anybody have any ideas on that one? I usually don't like it to fly behind me, so usually as soon as it starts circling overhead, I'll switch into another flight mode and continue flying. Right now my favorite is altitude hold. Okay, so I figured out some things in altitude hold mode. It seems that the throttle doesn't really have any effect, but I'm at 104 feet, 107 feet now. But if I go like full down, then I can climb, and then I can go full to turn. If I want to descend, I can go full down, and it'll go down a little bit. So that's pretty cool. I kind of like altitude hold. I've always told new pilots that the stabilization modes give you a huge crutch and do not teach you how to fly the plane properly. But I am loving altitude hold. The Strix Nano Goblin, especially in the wind, seems to get knocked around a lot. The altitude hold just makes it so easy to fly and so relaxing. Check out the wind speed at the top right corner. I think it's pretty accurate. So I'm testing out the winds aloft, and I think it's about right. So when I'm going with the wind, it hits 40, but then when I turn around the other way, 8 miles an hour. So yeah, so the winds are about 13 miles an hour. Hold is doing pretty good. It's still holding its altitude fairly well. But yeah, so it's windy aloft. It's pretty calm down here, but I'm in Texas, so it's always windy. So maybe that wind estimator's a pretty good idea. I've been flying the Goblin for almost 30 minutes. That is incredible. It feels like I can get a lot of settings, tweak some things without having to go and recharge batteries all the time. So having a nice endurance plane to try out these new features in inav is fantastic. All right, I got loiter mode going on. So it's right in front of me. Looks like it's doing another bang up job. I like how it makes that little left turn to stay right where it needs to. While I have the Strix Nano Goblin in loiter mode, let me tell you about a cool new feature. I have the ability to change my OSD screens. So by flicking this switch, I can go from the default
Camera off.
to the OSD layout number 1, which is blank on mine,
Camera on.
or this OSD layout number 2, which doesn't have a whole lot of things on it. So I think that's a pretty cool feature to go to
Camera off.
turning the OSD off to having the OSD back on. So you see it's kind of windy up there. It says it's not 40 miles an hour, but it's pretty windy and it's knocking it around pretty good. But you can see it's maintaining about 100 feet altitude while I make this little video. inav is so cool. I figure I have to end the video with a landing. Typically I break up the 30-minute flights into 3 10-minute flights. Once I establish the glide slope, I'm able to land in horizon mode hands off. This plane is awesome.